everyone, and welcome to my channel, Babbling Books. If it's your first time here, my name is Elaine. So this video is going to be part 2 for my May wrap-up. If you haven't checked out part 1, please do. I think I reviewed or talked about 11 books in that video, and in this one, I'm going to talk about 8. So I read 19 books this month, which is a ton for me. But anyway, so let's get into it. The first book that I read was There's Someone Inside Your House. So I listened to this on audio. It's a YA thriller. The basic premise is there is somebody going around killing high school students. I actually found this to be pretty boring for the topic. It sounds like it would be very entertaining, but it wasn't. When I was listening to the scene that was leading up to a murder and then the actual murder, it was very entertaining, but the rest of it was just a slag to get through. And I just really didn't enjoy this. And I ended up giving it a 3-star rating, and that's only because I really enjoyed the murder scenes, which sounds creepy to say out loud, but it's the truth. And this is the page that I did in my book journal. And I had a lot of fun with this one. And I did like a brick wall and a living room that I kind of crossed out. So that one was okay. And then I read Final Girls by Riley Sager. So this is another audiobook. It's a thriller. And the main character is a young woman who survived a mass murder. She and her friends had like rented a cabin in the woods, and they were all murdered, and she was the only survivor. And there are 2 other girls from other other scenes. You know, some I think was like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and they are also the lone survivor, and they call themselves the Final Girls. Well, one of these Final Girls kills herself, and the other 2 get together to meet for the first time and to discuss what has happened. And then there's another timeline where you read about what happened that night in the woods. And once again, I was disappointed. The previous timeline where you're reading about what happened in the woods, that was interesting. The current timeline was incredibly boring, in my opinion, up until maybe the last maybe 50 to 100 pages, and the speed picked up. So I ended up giving this one a 3-star rating because it was just okay. There were times where I felt like I was forcing myself through it to get to the good stuff, but there was nothing necessarily anything wrong with it. I just didn't think it was great. Yeah, so this is the book page, the journal page that I did for it. I tried to like connect these 3 girls with kind of a triangle, and it takes place, a lot of the book takes place in New York City, I believe. So I did like a little skyline. So yeah, and then I read One Grave Too Many by Beverly Connor. So this is a book about a forensic pathologist. And she has decided that she is done being the person who digs up mass graves and has to, look through the graves of, mass genocide victims and all those horrible things. So she takes a job as the head curator of a museum. Excuse me. While she's trying to get this museum up and running, an ex-boyfriend shows up with a bone for her to look at, which she's not thrilled at. She wants as far away from human remains as she could possibly get. And it's a bone of a human, and she ends up taking part in trying to solve a murder. And you find out what drove her to go from trying to help identify the bodies of these horrible disasters or genocide to working in a museum. And there are people at the museum that are not happy that she has taken this job. And so there's like a little side plot going on where things are happening at the museum. But I really, really enjoyed this one. It is very much like Bones, if you like the TV show. The characters are not quite as unique, but it's the same sort of a premise. Forensic pathologist pairs up with a police officer, uses people at the museum to help solve murders, that sort of thing. The second book is supposed to be much more like, kind of like Bones than this one was, because she's sort of just dipping her toe back into forensic pathology. But I really enjoyed this one, and I look forward to the next book. And this is the journal page that I did for it. So I have a woman here, and there's like a jawbone and a femur, and I tried to do a little, some columns. And like it says, I ended up giving this one a 4-star rating because I thought this one was very enjoyable. And then I read a historical romance by one of my all-time favorite authors. So this is book 1 of the McGareth, I think, Brothers series. So book 1 is called If You Dare. So in this Castilian woman who is elegant and very much refined lady, she ends up finding this mercenary Highlander while she's on, while she's like riding her horse. And she, even though he's the enemy, she ends up taking him back to her manor and nursing him back to health. And then all of his other Highlander mercenary band shows up and kind of take over her house, and she's very haughty, and he thinks she's a snob, and so he actually behaves even worse than he normally would, just to irritate her. And yeah, so a bunch of different things happen, but I thought this was a lot of fun to read. She, the Castilian lady, she is beautiful and sassy and snarky and smart and not afraid to brain you with a wine bottle if she thinks that you deserve it. And the Highlander is this big, gruff man who's much smarter than he appears to be, and is always taken by surprise when said lady whacks him upside the head with a bottle of wine. So I very much recommend this one. And this is a journal page that I did for it. I decided to try my hand at drawing a regal lady in a gown. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. It was very entertaining. And then I listened to Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins. So if you're familiar with Golden Girls, if Blanche Devereaux and Buffy the Vampire Slayer had a baby, it would be Harper. And Harper is the main character of this book. So she is a Southern young lady, and they do cotillion and drink sweet tea, and you only ever use foul language in the most extreme circumstances. And you wear pearls and, you know, just all of those things. And she ends up getting superpowers, for lack of a better term, and becomes the protector of another student. And it turns her entire world upside down, because she doesn't want to fight and bleed and do all of these things. She wants to be a lady. So this was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed about 75% of the book, but I didn't particularly care for the ending, so I'm not going to continue this series. But it was a lot of fun. And I would totally watch this if this was a TV show or a movie. And that is Rebel Belle. And this is the page that I did for it. So I tried my hand at drawing a high-heeled shoe, and I did a big bow and a strand of pearls and a crown, because she wants to be homecoming queen so badly. So I had a lot of fun with that. And then I read the second book of the McGareth brothers, and this one is called If You Deceive by Kresley Cole. So this is the oldest brother, I believe, of the McGareth Highlander brothers. So this one's a little more complicated, but this is my favorite of the three. So Hugh meets a woman at a masquerade event, and he's quite smitten with her, and Hugh is horribly scarred, and so he takes advantage of being able to hide his face, and he and this woman have a very candid conversation, and he's very taken with her. And then you find out who she is and that she is not who she appears to be, which is very, very thrilling. If you are a fan of a woman in desperate situations doing what she needs to do to survive, this one is a great one to read. If you like your heroes to be unrepentant assholes until they fall in love and realize how big of a jerk that they actually are, and that they have risked losing the one thing they want more than anything, and then have to repent and apologize and to make up for what they've done, this is another really good one for you. So this one is If You Deceive by Kresley Cole. Highly, highly recommend. So this is the journal page I did for it. A large portion of this one takes place in France. And so I kind of went with a very gilded look and like ripped paper. And I enjoyed, this is one of my favorites, I think, that I did. And then I read The Dry by Jane Harper. So this takes place in Australia. And the main character, Federal Agent Falk, he is a police officer or a federal agent out of Melbourne. I think I said that right. And he receives a letter, a note from the father of his childhood best friend that says, "I know you lied, and I know Luke lied. Be at the funeral." So Agent Falk goes back to his hometown for Luke's, who is his childhood best friend, for his funeral. Luke has apparently killed himself and his entire family. And Agent Falk stays to try to find out what happened. And you also find out what happened, 15, 20 years ago that sort of changed all of their lives. And the setting for the book is during like a 3-year-long drought in this very rural area of Australia. And so everything is very dry and dusty. Really enjoyed this one. I have the second book, which I'm going to read. This is a journal page I did for it. So I tried to do like cracked ground, and then I did like a dusty, farm scene, I guess, kind of. I really enjoyed this one. The pace was very well done. It kept moving. I never really felt like there was a lag. I liked Agent Falk, and I was very interested to find out what had happened when Agent Falk was a teenager. So that timeline was just as interesting. So I do recommend that one. And the last book is The Coroner by Jennifer Dornbush. So a young woman is a surgical resident in Chicago, and her father is the pathologist for this small town, and she has to leave her residency for a few days because her father has had a massive heart attack. So while she is trying to make arrangements with her father, she runs into her ex-boyfriend, who is the chief of police. And she's sort of pressured by her father and this chief of police to do the autopsy on this dead teenage girl who is the daughter of a senator. And she agrees, thinking that if she can just keep her dad in the hospital to get better, she'll just do this autopsy to take it off of her dad's plate, and then she'll give the results to the chief and she'll go back home. Well, of course, that's not what happens. She ends up staying longer and longer and longer trying to do things to help her father, as well as she gets very caught up in solving this murder. I enjoyed this one immensely. This, I think, was my favorite read for the, at least for the second half of the month. I liked the main character. I liked the side characters. I thought that the plot was interesting. And I very much look forward to reading the second book in this series too. And this is the journal page that I did for it. I just tried to do some, like, there's a brain. I just tried to do some sciencey looking things for it. But yeah. And so that's it. That's everything that I read for the second half of the month. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you liked any of them, and if you have any recommendations. I'm always looking for a good female detective, female pathologist, anything where the main character is a woman involved in solving a crime. I enjoy those. So thanks. Bye.